Your 8-minute question and answer period will now begin. How does your team define success?
So, the number one way we define success is just the amount of food that we grow and the amount of people that we feed, and making sure that we have as big an impact as possible.
Tell us about your project's marketing strategy to reach your target audience.
Yeah, we market our projects through a few different avenues. So we have social medias on all platforms, as well as we have a website that outlines all of our projects, as well as we have a lot of integral relationships and partnerships with Brandon that we utilize as vehicles to promote our projects. So that'll be through the university, the city of Brandon, the Samaritan House, etc. So we have a lot of integral partnerships that we're able to promote our project.
And with the gardens in particular, there's also a lot of word of mouth. And so people will talk to their neighbors. And so a lot of the people who are interested in our garden is because they've heard about it from our gardeners.
What areas of your projects do you see as most innovative and why?
I think the number one thing with our gardens that's the most innovative is just the sheer amount of relationships that we do build within our community and with other organizations that allow us to find new ways to make an impact, and that allow us to really find things beyond just growing food that we can do with our gardens. So we do things like education. We've had university classes come out to the gardens to learn about food security. We've had elementary school classes come out to help like plant onions and stuff in food bank beds. And then with our project expansion that we're planning right now with the Brandon Keystone Center, the reason why that's happening in the first place is because they reached out to the Samaritan House to ask for some advice, and then the Samaritan House told them to get into contact with us to talk to us about that.
How do you measure the long-term impact of your projects on your beneficiaries?
So I think part of it is like, obviously we measure all the food that we grow. And so we know that you need food to eat and you need to eat to live. So we know that's important. And then also just like by having those relationships that are like back and forth and continuously talking with our partners, we can see what they need and that we're meeting their needs with our project.
What accomplishment from the last year are you most proud of?
I would say the accomplishment we're most proud of is navigating through COVID. Dealing with the pandemic, obviously it throws a lot of curveballs into your projects, and especially with our gardening program itself, we were able to still grow the same amount of food as we would on a regular year, which was a strong accomplishment for us. And especially just with our other projects as a whole, most of our projects are workshop-based projects, and it's very difficult to not be able to always be in person with those people and develop those strong relationships. So I think what we're most accomplished, our biggest accomplishments this year, is really navigating the pandemic and still being able to have the same impact as we have in previous years.
Could you clarify the role of your partnerships and the role of your team in your projects?
So with the garden itself, the biggest role that Enactus plays is a logistical role, where we are in constant contact with all our gardeners. We do all the organization of the garden beds themselves. We provide the financial support for the garden to make sure that if something happens to the well and we need a new part, that it gets repaired as quickly as possible. And then we also do just like routine work to keep the garden upkept. So mowing lawns, this past year, tilling every single bed, essentially that.
What didn't go well this year and what did you learn from it?
I think there was a lot of uncertainty at the beginning of the year because the gardening season was starting while there were still most of the restrictions in place in our province. And so we didn't really know whether or not we'd be able to operate the garden in the first place until we got the approval from the city of Brandon. So doing it this year and going forward into the future, we want to make sure that we're starting a lot earlier than we actually ended up doing, to make sure that we're not sort of running by the skin of our teeth a little bit, and that we're a lot more comfortable with how we're doing things.
How do did you come up with the idea for your projects?
So with the garden, it came through our relationship with the Samaritan House and talking with them about what they needed. With our other projects like WISE, it would come through talking with our partners at Westman Immigrant Service to see what they need. And then through something like Community Creations, that's just like having a passionate member who joins the team who has a really great idea that we are then able to support and like provide assistance and just volunteer assistance with as well.
Can you outline the costs related to the development of your project?
As for our workshop-based projects, honestly, we really haven't had minimal costs just because we have produced most of the materials internally through our university. So that's allowed us to kind of develop those for free. So yeah, for workshop-based projects, we have been able to kind of, develop those with quite minimal cost due to kind of our integral relationships with the university and other community partnerships.
Explain what.
Sorry, and then with the gardens themselves, we have like our initial capital costs to like build the fence and build the garden beds and the shed and like the well and set everything up there. That we were able to fundraise and receive grants for. And then we all just have like the ongoing upkeep costs that we're able to pay for through like the gardener subscriptions.
Explain what tools your team uses to measure impact.
I'd say probably one of our biggest tools, like we've kind of mentioned, is our partnerships. So say, for example, with WISE, our biggest partnership there is with Westman Immigrant Services in Brandon. So they kind of work with the clients on a long-standing basis and kind of update us on kind of the progress that they're making through our workshops and the impact that we continuously make on a long-term basis. And that's, the same with Community Creations as well. We develop strong relationships with our participants so that we're able to continuously kind of stay in contact and see their long-term impact as well. And yeah, Dylan will talk about the gardens.
Pretty much the same answer as Jessica for the gardens there. And then also where appropriate, and especially with the workshops, we do have like a series of surveys that we give to people who attend the workshops. And so it's not just necessarily talking with the people who are running the workshops, but it's our actual participants themselves who are filling out surveys that provide us both quantitative and qualitative information about how well we've done and what we could add in the future.
If your team was given $25,000 right now, what would you use it for?
I think I would love to see sort of like the expansion of our gardens into like a full-on urban farm.
Your time has now expired. Thank you, Enactus Branding University.